Hold on. I've never done a live on YouTube, I don't think, maybe years ago. So I thought this would be a good time to do it. I'm going to be recording a podcast with a friend in a little bit. So just down here in my office today, and happy Father's Day to everybody. So I wanted to talk today about something that is really important when you're looking back at your relationship and you're wondering where things went awry. A lot of people do not understand how important physical and romantic attraction is within marriage, and that is real. If you did not see a romantically connected and attuned couple growing up, which means if your parents were basically just friends, and it's fine to be friends, but in a marriage, most people are hoping that they are more than just friends. But if you don't have a template for that, then you just assume that having a romantic or a sexual or an intimate marriage is just in the movies, right? And then as you get older, you tend to attract people who only see you as a friend because that is your template. And there's all these people that say, oh, it's some kind of bait and switch when people say that they never. Okay, because let's just back up. So we'll get into couples counseling, and then often the woman, sometimes the man, admits that they were never sexually or romantically attracted to their spouse, and that's why they don't have sex with them now. And then the partner acts like this was a definite thing that was a lie and malicious and a bait and switch, and that everybody knows that you're supposed to be romantically attracted within marriage. Well, everybody doesn't think that that is an option for them. So while most people think that, movies have some truth in them, they think that that is limited. Movies are not only true, there's a big fantasy component. So when they see romantic movies or TV shows where a couple seems very attuned to each other and very close and very attracted, they assume that that's just fantasy. And that is 100% real. So people that are friends with you are similar to you. Like attracts like. So I've seen many times that men and women who try to make sense of their life compare their life to that of their friend group. And if you are a woman that does not have a lot of confidence, not very romantically confident, doesn't feel she's very attractive, then you are going to attract similar friends, right? And so then all of your friends are also going to be in these kind of maybe friend like marriages, and none of them are going to be having a sexual or romantic component. And if you're a man, the type that I call it is the gentleman eunuch. So if you're the gentleman eunuch type of man where you think that your role is to be very nice, but that there's no way that a woman could really be sexually attracted to you because, your mother and your father weren't like that, and you don't think of yourself as a very good looking or charming guy. So you think that your role is just really to be friends with the woman and kind of to facilitate her best life, and you think she's attractive but you can't imagine she would think you're attractive, and all of your friends are in the same boat. And so these are kind of, you know not to put too fine a point on it, but these are the people who are, they don't necessarily have low self-esteem in every sphere, so they could think that they're smart, they could think that they're capable, but they tend to have fairly low self-esteem about their looks in specific. These people that end up in marriages where they are not really with somebody who's attracted to them, they do not think that they are very personally dynamic and charming and attractive. So they just cannot believe that somebody would be attracted to them. So then they get into a marriage with somebody and the person isn't attracted to them, but they think that maybe with enough work, this will end up working out, that the person will have sex with them or that the person will be close to them, because it's the type that I call a workhorse. Or in a woman, it's a people pleaser. She feels that if she does enough for her boyfriend, then her husband, then he will end up being basically as close to her as he can be, although she doesn't really think it's a possibility for him to be super close, and connected in that way, because there's pretty beautiful girls and then there's her. So she doesn't really think that it's a possibility that outside of a fairy tale, that a woman who is a average looking or lower than average looking woman like her could get a man who's like really, really into her. And so this is how this gets together. And then in therapy later on, when there becomes no sex, because after the honeymoon stage, everything, lowers even, sometimes massively more. So people even become sexless. Most people don't. But when the sex really kind of goes away, then they get into marital counseling. And then both people sometimes admit, but at least one person admits, that they didn't really feel any sexual attraction. But the other person, instead of acting like this is like terrible and a shock, on some level, at a deep level, they often say with enough therapy that they knew that. They knew that this person wasn't really into them, but they didn't really think it was possible for somebody to be really into them. So this is a co-created problem. Both people thought that a marriage wasn't really going to be romantic, close, or sexual because they didn't see such a thing growing up. So both of them had these different expectations. What does it look like when somebody really is attracted to you? Well, they think that you're very cute. They think that the things you do are endearing. They want to be physically close to you. They want to talk and to hang out. They want to be near you. If you do not really feel like that about anybody, then there is also a possibility that you are asexual. And a lot of people that overlaps with being on the autism spectrum, where there's a lot of sensory issues. So you never really want to be close to somebody or touching them super much. And in that case, your partner kind of knew that. They probably didn't know, obviously, that you were on the spectrum or asexual or anything like that, but they felt kind of a coldness or a disconnect emanating from you early on. But again, they just assumed that that is what they were, going to get. That's what they deserve. That's what a person like them would end up getting in the world out of marriage. So instead of blaming one another, this sort of marriage, it can work, to raise children and to be a team and to be friends. But if one person's self-esteem grows and they say, you know what, I want to be in love, I want to experience that, then the marriage usually does not continue. Or maybe it can be an open marriage or poly, and people can get their needs met outside of the marriage. But if one person really never was attracted to the other or both, then creating that out of nothing is really not viable. Like that cannot happen. You can get closer, certainly, and you could definitely empathize with each other and understand where each other was coming from, understand families of origin, understand expectations and self-esteem and all the things that I just mentioned. And that can get rid of a lot of anger or blame. But if you guys were never really attracted to one another and were just in it to make a family, like the family that you grew up in, then it is really, really hard to transform that into some sort of romantic thing. Because at the point where you were at before is not the point where you're at now. Now you have higher self-esteem. Now you want to experience that. And so people that you would be drawn to now are different than the people that you'd be drawn to like 10, 15, 20, 40 years ago or whatever. So keep this stuff in mind, because there are people who have expectations that a romantically connected marriage just is not for them. And then sometimes later they'll end up blaming their partner somehow for baiting and switching them. This is always something where both people are pretty much aware of it. This isn't a situation where, we're in some kind of soap opera or like Lifetime movie and somebody is trying to trap somebody for their billions of dollars so they pretend to be attracted to them. No, we're talking about a situation where two people thought, okay, well, we can build a life, we can have a family. And all right, nobody in my friend group is like seems to be in some sort of super romantic thing. That's probably just the movies. I know my parents weren't like that. I'm not really very super attractive myself, and neither is this person, and so we found each other and we're going to be friends. None of this is articulated. This is below the level of thought, but it almost goes without saying in both of their minds. Then when you change and you start wanting more, that's when people start to come into therapy and figure out if this is sustainable. This is a situation frequently where people stay together for the kids, and then when the kids are out of the house, they separate, or they have their own lives. Sometimes there's infidelity, not frequently, because remember, these are people who are very duty bound. They're focused on obligation and family, and those people do not usually cheat, but sometimes they do if they really see somebody and bond with somebody that is in their naturally occurring life, such as the workplace or the neighborhood or something, and this person is really attracted to them and they are really attracted, and so they almost can't say no to this sort of situation. That does happen. But what I see more is people come into therapy and they say, I've realized that we never had an attraction in our marriage, and what do I do, and why did this happen, and is my partner kind of a monster who like led me down this path? And no, no, that's not what happened. This is almost always a co-created situation by two people with low self-esteem who did not have anything different in their lives and in their families to go on. All right, I hope you guys like this live, and I'm going to be putting this one out as a podcast. Hopefully, you follow me on the Dr. Psych Mom show on Spotify and Apple, and of course, across all of my social media. And if you ever need a therapist or a coach, reach out to me and my people. I'm a clinical psychologist in private practice. I have like over 10, 12 people at my practice that are therapists and coaches at Best Life Behavioral Health. And you can always reach out to me directly if you'd like to schedule therapy or coaching. I have very few slots now, which is why I have so many people working for me, right? And so you can always email info@bestlifebehavioralhealth.com to get to the group, or Samantha@drpsychmom.com to get to me. And we work with relationship issues, adults, everybody from teenagers up, because we're all virtual practice in all the states, because coaches can work everywhere, and our therapists like myself are licensed through in like 41 states, some of them, and some of them just in the state that they live in. But we have great people, so whether it's couples work, individual work, midlife is a time when a lot of people come in, and they're trying to figure out the meaning of their life, their legacy, like what do they want the rest of their life to look like. Midlife is like you throw a ball up and then the ball starts coming down, and when the ball starts coming down, you're more than halfway done. A lot of people feel a lot of urgency to change things up because they don't feel authentic as it is, and they realize that life is so finite. All right. Oh, I did have one question here. Look at that. Since this is a YouTube live for anybody that's going to be seeing it later, do attractive and successful people have better relationships? Well, I work with a lot of attractive and successful people who do not have good relationships. There is a halo effect where people tend to think the best of people when they have one good trait. So if they're attractive, people tend to think they're smarter, and if they're successful, people tend to think they're more attractive and smarter. So, yeah, certainly it's like money, does having money make things easier? Yes. Does having education make things easier? Yes. The education and income is co-varies with less divorce. So there's an inverse relationship between education, income, and divorce. But yes, certainly, if you're better situated in life, more things go well for you, then you do have, fewer relationship issues. But I can assure you that I work with plenty of attractive and successful people that do have relationship issues. So there's no way to kind of insulate yourself from having relationship issues, because it's usually based on how you grew up and the template that you are modeling after, and more than any innate individual in the individual characteristics. So good question, and I will sign off now. Y'all have a great Father's Day, and I'll talk to everybody soon.